rather linked there. Let's talk to Mark Littlewood. He's Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you
Good to be with you.
Lovely to talk to you. I want to talk about the cost of living. Can I just get your thoughts, though, just on the criticism of Suella Braverman on this issue? I mean, basically, they're all but calling her a bigot. And let's face it, they're coming really close, a lot of these commentators, to calling her sort of Uncle Tom, coconut, basically saying she's of colour, she's a daughter of immigrants, she shouldn't hold these views because she's supposed to hold certain other views because of her ethnicity.
Pretty extraordinary, isn't it, Julia? I mean, I worry now that there are whole swathes of important issues that we have to debate in the public domain, on your show and in Parliament and in the pub, that you can't talk about anymore without people screaming at you, whether that's refugees and immigration, climate change, trans issues, God knows what. So I'm worried.
Bigot, I'll just shout bigot the whole way through. I'll just shout bigot at you the whole way through and that'll solve the problem.
I'm used to it now. Happens a lot. Yeah, it's extraordinary, really. And, you know, she's onto something here. I mean, I'm not sure I completely agree with her analysis, but let's engage with her analysis, not just, you know, shout that this is poisonous and outrageous. There's clearly a problem here, and we've got to discuss it in calm and measured terms, not by just throwing brickbats at each other.
I had an extraordinary exchange last night with Gavin Barwell, now Lord Barwell. You're going to be a peer as well very soon, are you not? Where last night he was basically arguing, you know, how could you possibly make these claims, you know, Julia, and support what is said? You know, what is the basis for the claim that many arrivals live a separate existence in a parallel society? He says, I live in one of the most diverse parts of the country. You're talking about my friends and neighbours. It is untrue and deeply offensive to suggest they're not part of our society. I pointed to him to the Dame Louise Casey report in 2016, ordered by Cameron, published by Theresa May, in a government of which he, Lord Barwell, then was the Minister for London. He later went on to be her Chief of Staff, for goodness sake, in number 10, which basically outlined all the issues. People aren't assimilating. Huge numbers of people are living in parallel societies. I mean, his own government that he was a part of said this, but we're not allowed to say it now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it is important in this debate that we've got to parcel a whole range of different things out. You've picked cultural assimilation, Julia. I think that's a good one to think about. I mean, this is a country that used to or is supposed to practice sort of free speech and free expression. I'd want immigrants that come in to not only acknowledge that, but to warmly embrace it. So there's the assimilation point. Then there's also the point of sort of, are you really fleeing for your life? I mean, if you really are, and you've come from a territory that you're fleeing from because your life's at risk, okay, we've got to consider that quickly and swiftly, not for years while we're putting you in a hotel, but you're probably not fleeing for your fear of your life if you've fled France. I'm no enormous fan of Emmanuel Macron, but he's not.
It's not that bad. Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are the debates we need to have.
Different parts of the debate. Cultural assimilation. Is it, you know, refugee status you're seeking, or are you an economic migrant? Some economic migration is really good if you're coming here to work and be a net contributor to society. If you're coming here just to claim welfare, well, we would frown upon that. So there's lots of different angles to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me bring you to the issue we actually invited you on about, though. That's cost of living. Water companies have been ordered to pay back £114 million to customers through lower bills after missing key targets when it came to things like leakages, dealing with breakage in supply, reducing sewage and water pollution. A lot of people welcome that, but actually there's an awful lot of us, and £114 million is really changed down the back of the sofa for a lot of these water firms, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is, I will readily concede, Julia, as a free market kind of guy, quite a difficult sector to get the market to work in, right? Because it is a natural monopoly. You can't, you know, you can choose where you buy your socks or your breakfast cereal from quite easily, but water is a natural monopoly. I think the problem we've got to get at here is, while some of the water companies deserve criticism, is what's the regulator doing? Have we got the right rules here? How has it got to this stage and this state? And what are those rules? Because, you know, on the one hand, there are rules in place to encourage the companies to invest in infrastructure, so to spend money there, make sure that these sort of leaks and problems don't happen. But if they do happen, then you need to give reimbursements to your customers, meaning in turn you have less to spend on the overall. infrastructure. I know some people will leap to the conclusion that, oh, well, let's just renationalise it, but that doesn't get rid of the problem.
No.
Either a public monopoly can be colossally inefficient, as we see with virtually every public monopoly that the government
I know, that's what a lot of people say. What is the answer? But at the end of the day, we know these water companies, they've not been building reservoirs. We saw massive leakages. You know, I've had problems with Thames Water. I mean, the biggest water area in the southeast, and Thames Water just, you know, taking weeks to mend a leak, which was just basically piling into my my basement of my home. I mean, abject failures again and again people are seeing, and the sewage being pumped out because of our, let's face it, we do actually are hindered by the fact we've got this Victorian sewage system, and that all needs to be replaced, and it's going to take many years and many billions of pounds to do it. But meanwhile, these companies, they're paying massive dividends to their shareholders. They're getting lovely bonuses for their executives. And a lot of people are wondering, well, why are they getting those payments when they're not doing their job properly?
Yeah, I've got some sympathy with that. I mean, I think that the way to solve it is you need to have a pretty clear and straightforward agreement about what your minimum service provision is.
Yeah.
That you can't be charging your customers if there are problems in the neighbourhood or getting water to them or the rest of it, and then you're liable to be sued, not just get a stiff letter from Therese Coffey, the Environment Secretary, or a rap over the knuckles from the regulator. Your customers sue you, probably part of a joint collective action. So it is a tricky industry. But I'm not entirely clear what the duties are of my water provider to me in my flat here, Julia. I don't know. I do know what the duties are of my internet provider, and if they fall below that, I don't pay.
Yeah.
Now, there are obviously overspill effects that don't just happen into one person's house, that affect the community at large rather than within your own building. But that's the sort of system we've got to get to. Here is your minimum service. This is what you've got to provide, a bare minimum. If you don't, then customers need to be recompensed, and communities need to be recompensed.
Well, at least some regulation, people will hope. Again, I don't think we're feeling there's enough regulation, certainly of the energy companies, and that we know you've got new off-gen price caps starting on Sunday. It's a story for another day. Mark Littlewood, great to talk to you from the Institute of Economic Affairs.